Hey guys, Ryan DeMent from Chasing Happiness podcast. Hope you guys are having a great day. Today on the podcast, we have Amy Bernstein. And listen to this headline. I like this. Amy writes stories that let readers feel while making them think. Feel and think, guys, while you're reading. Not it doesn't happen all the time. You can't get immersed in that story. So I'm looking forward to having a great conversation with Amy. Amy, welcome to the show.
Thank you, Ryan. I'm really happy to be here.
You're more than welcome. Thank you for the wait. I know it was a little bit of a time, but we've got you on and we're ready to rock and roll. But before we go into what you do for writing, can you tell the listeners a little about who you are?
Sure. I am an author, so I write fiction and nonfiction. I'm also a book coach, which means that I help guide a lot of other authors on their own journey to find their best path to publishing. And in general, in addition to my own writing, I'm really out there supporting writers and other creative people to make sure that they can realize their own creative dreams.
I like that. Are you a ghostwriter at all?
No, I do not ghostwrite, which is to say that I don't write words for other people. I really am in the business of helping authors figure out the story that's really inside them so they can tell it the best possible way.
Cool. So can we'll jump right in. How can you write stories that let readers feel and think at the same time? Because I know I read a lot or I try to, and some books just don't do that for me.
Yes, no, I agree. I think that tagline comes out of the fact that I was a journalist for many years, and I also had some pretty intensive communication jobs in government and nonprofits. So a lot of that is the thinking side of writing, and I really love the in-depth, meaty side that you get from fact-based information from nonfiction, which is why, by the way, I coach nonfiction and some memoir. So I love when you're reading something and it really challenges your assumptions or just makes you think, or it opens up a whole world to you that you just didn't know if you're reading into a culture that you in a country, say, you haven't been to. On the other side, on the feeling side, we all want to feel something from stories, right? We want to feel
Yeah.
something from the characters and their journeys. And so you're not just going to stick with something if all it's doing is making you think and question. You need to feel some emotions along too. And so ideally, we put both together. It's not easy to do.
So you do nonfiction. What are some topics that you typically write on?
There's a couple different answers to that. First of all, I have a nonfiction book coming out, which is written for all self-doubting creative people, and it's called Wrangling the Doubt Monster: Fighting Fears, Finding Inspiration, because we all have a doubt monster that lives inside of us all the time. And my premise is that you cannot banish doubt, but you absolutely can learn to accommodate it and continue on to work on your creativity, even with those doubts that live inside you. So I'm really excited about that to be coming out because I think it's going to help a lot of people. But I write a weekly Substack that's exploring a lot of things around creativity and anxiety and doubt and all productivity and all these kinds of things. And so that's my own nonfiction. But I have many clients in my book coaching practice who come from all disciplines that you could imagine: education, science, journalism. They're coming from all over and they have a book inside them, where they think they do, and I really help those authors, often first time authors, but not always, to dig that out and figure out how to really structure a meaningful book that they can write and that can get published.
You said something in that long description, but I love it. But do you think doubt and anxiety are tied together? And it sounds like it's in. Is it in your book too, where you talk about anxiety and doubt?
The book, Wrangling the Doubt Monster, is really a book of inspiration and encouragement.
Okay.
It's not a how to. There are a lot of how to books out there. There are a lot of books out there prescribing and telling writers and other folks, here's what to do. Mine is more so that the creative person feels really seen and validated, because when they read my book, they're going, oh, yes, this is exactly how I feel. I do feel this way. And I can finally admit this and realize that I'm not alone. That, yes, doubt and anxiety are intertwined. Anxiety may be a lot more free floating about a lot of things in our lives. Doubt often really circles back to doubting your ability to accomplish something, even something that you very much want to achieve.
So I'm going to circle back on. I'm not a creative person, so I don't know how the book would tie into me. But I've had asked the question: do creative people struggle with being seen and being able to be? When you say seen, is it their creativity that they have, or is it truly being seen by others as being a creative individual? Or is
Yes,
it something else?
no, it's both. Creative people, and let's take a moment to define what I mean by creative people.
Okay.
There's a conventional definition. So you could think of this as a writer, an artist, a quilter, a dancer,
Okay.
a music composer. But creativity also extends to people, say, who are entrepreneurs and are trying to start new companies or have started new companies and perhaps they've had some early failures. These are deeply creative people. And so creativity is inside all of us. And when I talk about being seen and heard, I just ran a workshop a week ago with a room full of aspiring artists across disciplines, and you would not believe the extent to which several of them said, "I've never been in a room full of other artists. I finally feel that people understand who I am and the way I think." And it was a first time experience for some of them. And making art in any form can be a very lonely sort of business. And I always make the point that we live in a culture that rewards success and recognizes people in very specific ways, financially, in terms of title, in terms of power and influence. And when you're making art in any form, you might not have any of those things. So it is very hard to be seen and to feel validated when you're a very creative person. And that's why a lot of us tend to tamp that down because it doesn't feel that real.
You brought up art, and I know that's a very competitive space, and it also is very hard to make it there. Is that kind of the and I'm trying to dig into this creative side because I'm not. I'm an operator. I'm a nuts and bolts type of a guy, so I'm trying to understand the creative piece of if they're out, let's say they're an artist and they've got several paintings, and I don't know anything about the art space, so I could be off base. So don't hold me to it. And they're putting out pieces. How does that creative person get seen? I know their art potentially will take a while to be seen or be sold, but how does that person really work with the fulfillment and go overcoming doubt when it comes to
Right.
that? Because
Well,
I that's got to be tough.
you're tapping into the very transactional side of it, which is a piece of it. When I say the transactional side, what I mean is somebody makes a thing and then they want to bring that thing to a marketplace. That is one tiny piece of being creative. But let me just digress for one moment, Ryan, because I am certain you're a creative person. I imagine that you're a problem solver in your work life, in the things you're doing. I think running a
I mean,
podcast, run
yeah,
exactly. Problem solving is a very creative endeavor because you need to think, I know it's a cliche, but you need to think outside all the normal boxes. You have to pull from different strands of your own understanding and knowledge and figure out what you don't know sometimes to solve a problem. That's an intensely creative endeavor. Now, that kind of creativity might often be rewarded by conventional means. You solve a
yeah.
place at work or for a boss or for a group or for a team, and that's all great. But I'm getting at there are lots and lots of people who reach a point often in midlife and they look around and they say, "Is that all there is?" Because they just don't feel fulfilled enough. They feel that their life holds more purpose and they just can't figure out what that is. We've scaled those first couple mountains in our 20s and 30s and maybe into our 40s. And then we get to the top and we look around and we go, okay, now what? What's next? This can't be the end. Like, I can't have reached the plateau. I just plateau here until I'm old. And many people are realizing that they have other ways they want to express themselves. It could be cooking, it could be being a chef. It could be becoming one of those people helps people declutter and become like a household organizer. It could be anything where you're tapping into all these different ways of being creative, not just to solve problems, but also to importantly express some inner joy and passion that you might not be too connected to because, again, our mainstream culture doesn't tend to reward that, not off the bat. That's a bigger picture that I'm looking at. And I absolutely believe that you are a creative person. That doesn't mean you pick up a paintbrush.
No, I will not. In your book, I ask everybody on the show this question is, from your book, what would be 3 nuggets that you could share with the listeners if there's individuals listening that have doubt or creative or any of the above, what could they take from your book and those 3 nuggets and apply to their life today?
I think I've gone at the first one, but let me restate it. Everyone walks with doubt. What you can do is you can shift your mindset so that you are able to continue to practice your creativity while acknowledging that you have doubts about what you're able to do, but that need not stop you. You can walk past that. And so it doesn't have to be an absolute brick wall. It can be something that accompanies you but doesn't stop you. So that's a really important thing to realize. Another important thing to realize is that being creative or stepping into your creativity, however you want to put it, doesn't necessarily mean taking giant, enormous steps and making huge changes in your life. These things can really start small. They can start with literally making a note to yourself in the morning about a creative idea that you have, and you just jot something down. And then you hold on to that throughout the day and let it grow inside you. There's so many ways of beginning to embrace your creativity in really small ways. It's not just about waking up in the morning and quitting your job and going off and using all your savings to launch something. You can do that, but that's not the only way to be creative. This can really start small. You can take a class, you can take a course, you can simply find a community of like minded people who like to do what you think you like to do. Maybe you want to learn pottery and you can go in that direction. These are small steps. Those are some of the things that it's really important to start thinking about when they want to be creative. The one other thing I'd mention, I guess the number three, is about getting comfortable with taking different kinds of risks. We reach a point in our adult lives where we've taken some risks here and there. We don't get anywhere without doing that. But we may also have reached a point where we've stopped doing anything that feels risky, anything that feels chancy. We've got a mortgage, we've got kids, we've got responsibilities, and we become risk averse. But when you're stepping into being creative or more creative, you have to get comfortable with taking creative risks. That doesn't necessarily threaten your financial well-being or your family dynamic. It does mean letting yourself think in new ways, try new things that you might not succeed at right away, and being vulnerable in some new ways. But it's a very important part of that process.
Is so here's the thing is, for me, I think, and this is gonna be off topic, but I'm gonna circle it back in because it just came to me. With social media and with it being around, we tend to be instant gratification type of people. If we don't launch that one video that we launched doesn't go viral, I'm done. And I'm gonna tie this back. Is instant gratification play into having doubt in this space and what you're talking about? And what I'm trying to get to is I'm thinking of myself as, okay, I do have to take risks and I have to make decisions in my other businesses that I run. But at the same time, I also have to make sure, like you said, I got a mortgage to pay, keep a roof over my head and pay the bills and put food on the table. But at the same time, I have doubt. Is it gonna work? Is failure is a four-letter word for a lot of people. For me, it started as a four-letter word when I got on my entrepreneurial journey. It's now changed into it's my motto. If I'm not
Exactly.
failing, I'm not trying. I know it's an old adage, but at the same
It's
time
true.
is if I'm failing, it's okay to I give myself time to say decompress and say, "Okay, that didn't work. Now it's time to get back up and start moving forward." How does that all play into doubt and being creative, and how do we get through that?
Yes, let's start with the first part of your very astute insight, which was about instant gratification. Then we'll move into this notion of failure. There's no question that, again, this is something that culture does to us. When we steep ourselves in social media, we're seeing that teeny weeny piece of the iceberg that's up above the waterline, so to speak. We're seeing the people who have reached the pinnacle of something. They've succeeded. They're doing something really well. They're making hundreds of dollars from their music or whatever it is. When you're not seeing that enormous iceberg that's below the surface, you're not seeing the years of hard work that many people who eventually reach some type of recognizable success spend time to build their craft, to learn their craft, to get better, to fail. We don't see that. We see the shiny upside. We don't see the struggle along the way. And so we onboard that and we get to thinking, I've now failed at this thing once or twice. I must be terrible at this because I'm not successful yet. That really is such a self-defeating and unrealistic way to think. You need to put in the time and you need to give yourself the time to explore craft, master craft, learn, as you say, failure is so important to embrace because we really do learn from it. And not only do we learn from it teaches us how to have the grit that we need to persevere. So it's not just about learning from the failure itself. What can I do better? What went wrong? What can I do better? How do I get better? It's how do I survive this and go on? And that grit is really such a big part of the struggle. The old cliche that success is 99% perspiration and 1% inspiration. It's so true. And on social media, we see that 1%, right? We see those, the people who are out there who seem so inspired, and you don't see the 99% of what's behind that.
Very true, and that sign that's behind me, the success sign, is that iceberg that you're talking about. That's why I have it there. It is truly I would almost say 99.9% happens below the waterline, but
Agreed.
that's just me. But I wanna go back to this doubt. It's got me you've got me thinking about a bunch of different things that I've gone through and so forth, but the question to ask on doubt, and maybe it's in your book, the steps that we have to really take for ourselves to understand that we can overcome it and then be our best cheerleader or our biggest cheerleader and pump ourselves up. I know that's daunting, but what can we do or how
Yeah.
do we handle that? Because I'm thinking for myself personally, when I'm doubting, I really don't want to hear anybody else's opinion. It just, I tune everything out and I'm in my own head. Right or wrong, I don't know. That's where I wanted to start there. Is that a lot of what individuals do, or what's your thoughts on that?
Let's acknowledge this is so universal, and this is just part of the human condition because we all go through this in various points of our lives and for various reasons. We all go through it. There's nobody out there who doesn't. They're lying if they tell you otherwise. I don't use the word, and you use it, and I understand why. I don't say overcoming doubt because I think that's not only unrealistic, it's lying to yourself. I don't think it's something we really overcome. What we do is we become more risk tolerant and we can gain confidence when we begin to see how to succeed. And when we do succeed, we take that sort of empirical evidence on board and the doubt may lessen. It doesn't mean it goes away. But the only way, again, the only way through it is through it. When you're really doubting, what you're really doing is you're really afraid to be vulnerable. That's is what it really comes down to. You're afraid to
Love it.
put yourself out there because you might fall flat on your face, you might embarrass yourself, you might lose face, you might seem undignified, you might come across as an idiot. There's so many different ways that we push this back on ourselves and we want to step away. But what I'm always trying to get people to see really is, and I try and practice in my own life, and I'm not perfect with it, you can feel that way. You're gonna feel the vulnerability. You're gonna feel the fear of, "Oh my gosh." Let me just give a quick example. I had a grant to run a workshop recently, and it's a in-person workshop, and that's a very hard thing to do these days. To get people to come out of their house and come downtown into a city to go to a thing is very hard. They'll come out for a
Yeah.
rock star, but will they come out for me? So I went through a lots of doubt about this. Is anyone gonna come? What if they don't come? I'm gonna fail. And it was really difficult, but I was committed to doing it and making it the best experience that it could be. And at the end of the day, even though there were no shows over which I have absolutely no control, let's acknowledge that. You don't
Yep.
control all the factors, right? The people who came were extraordinarily committed and we had an incredible experience together. And so you really have to see what success really turns out to be. And you have to follow through despite all those doubts to see where you're going to come in the end. And what people are going to be surprised by is don't confuse your doubts and fears with the possible outcome of your endeavor. In other words, you're going to be afraid of failing or being vulnerable or being looking like an idiot. That's not an outcome. That's a byproduct of the effort. The outcome is likely that something goes really well and you're able
Yep.
to really claim that and keep that on board for next time. So I think it's important to remember that.
I love that. As we get a little closer to wrapping up, I've got a couple questions. So, with your coaching that you actually do with these other authors, is that something that you will work with somebody like new? Let's say someone's listening to the podcast, and, man, I really want to write a book and I need help. What's your ideal client that you want to work with if you're bringing on new clients?
Yeah, the ideal client is someone with some expertise in some nonfiction sphere, and it really can be virtually anything,
Okay.
who's really been living with an idea for a book for a while. In other words, yeah, writing a book or preparing a book proposal, which is the first step often in when you're creating nonfiction. You don't write the whole book. You have to wind up with a really strong structure and sample chapters and some other things. This is a commitment and a process. We're talking months. We're talking some really hard work that author has to be committed to doing. So if you're serious, if you have a serious idea, if you have a burning desire to try and figure out how to bring this into the world, I do help people give birth to new books. But you have to be ready to really be in it for the long haul. It's not something that you can just spit out in a long afternoon.
Do they have to have any type of experience with writing at all?
That's a really interesting question because I do work with debut authors, and I often will look at a sample of something they have written to see where they are as writers.
Okay.
If you don't have a facility, if you've determined, and this isn't me judging you, it's what you've determined for yourself. If you just don't have any facility for writing, it's not your thing. You're a really smart person, you've got a lot of skills, maybe you're more of a numbers person. That's more, you may want to go more the hiring a ghostwriter route where you basically are working with someone to put the words to your idea. That's
Mhm.
not the kind of work and that's great. There are a lot of great people out there to do that. That's not the kind of work I do. I work with that person who really is going to dig deep to formulate this in their own words with a lot of guidance from me on how to structure it and how to put the thing together. So that's an important distinction.
Okay. And if someone wanted to reach out to you and work with you, are you accepting new clients?
Very selectively right now. I'm almost completely full. I'm always happy to have all my initial conversations are free anyway. And because I see what your project is, what you're about, whether we're a potential fit. So I'm always happy for people to schedule a free call with me. They can do that through my book coaching website. I can share that here or just send that
Yes.
information to
Oh,
you.
yeah, share it here, and then I'll also put it in the show notes.
So my book coaching website, my book coaching is called Word First, and it's really just wordfirstbookcoach.com. That's wordfirstbookcoach.com. It's one word.
Great. Thank you for coming on and sharing that, and I know I went a little deep on the doubt, but
Love it.
for me, but also for other people. I'm sure there's other people out there like myself that can struggle with it, but thank you for sharing. Also, your book's coming out. Can we also tag your book in the show notes and you can
I sure
when's
hope you
it coming
will.
out? When
Mid-January.
Mid-January.
It is available for sale on Amazon now, and so I'll be happy to share that with your listeners.
If you could, even though it's on the recording, if you can, just go ahead and shoot me the link to it when we end the recording, and I will put it in the show notes also.
Will do.
All right. Thank you for coming on.
Thank you, Ryan. It was a great conversation. I appreciate it.
You're welcome.